Chimai, and welcome to the Alutiiq Culture workshop with Jessica Towns-Camara and myself, Heather Metrokin Cannon. This is a rattle that I constructed during this workshop development. It's made with hand-carved handles and mussel shells. Kashlaudak means a magical object. It derives from the root kashla, which means magic. Our ancestors used these rattles to dance and communicate with the spirit realm. The rattles were traditionally constructed of bent wood of some type, sinew, and puffin beak shells, or something to that effect to make the rattle sound.
So we're gonna show some videos that show how we put the rattles together in the workshop. The first thing is to separate your artificial sinew. It's 3 to 5 ply, so you want to separate it to make it thinner. So the next step is to thread your needle, and then we had pre-drilled holes in these rings. You're gonna bring that through and then knot the sinew onto the rattle and leave a 3-inch tail.
You'll then add 8 seed beads of your choice, a preciosa bead, a crow bead, and a shell for this project. Those are the beads we used. Of course, you can use whatever beads, suit your needs or what you have on hand. So there's Jessica putting on all those pieces. And then once you have all of those on, you want to add 1 seed bead and then go back up through all the beads you previously put on. Don't go back up through that last anchor bead, the one that you see Jessica putting on there, but you go back up through all the other ones until you reach the hoop.
So you want to tie off and hide your thread like the ancestors. That's kind of a little joke, but I've noticed with all the ancestral pieces, they like to hide their knots. So we're just tying the tail and the working thread together, and then we're going to send the needle back down through the beads and cut off the excess. And then I'll do the same thing with the tail. And then you'll just repeat that for the rest of the hoop. So a bunch of times. And so you can see here, and then it's just cutting it off. And then you'll want to drill holes in the handles. These handles were constructed by Heather. Heather mitered them together so that they fit together super nicely. And she did different styles. Sometimes they were a total like cross, and sometimes they were more of an X. And you can decide what's best for you. And as you'll see in some of the future slides where we're sharing the ancestral rattles, there's lots of different options for tying these on and for constructing the handles and the hoops.
So once you have your handles chosen and you are ready to construct them, you will have a thin peg, either a toothpick that you've carved down or a dowel, and you'll insert that into the hole. Once you've put some wood glue on it, then cut the excess off, lash that centerpiece with some sinew, and then cut that extra sinew off as well. Then you're going to lash your handles to your rattle hoops, however many pieces you have, however many circles. You can lash it in various ways. We've, of course, drilled holes in these handles and lashed them with sinew and then burned off or cut off the excess sinew. And that attaches the handles to the rattle frames.
So our kashau represents the Alutiiq spiritual realms. And so this was something that we saw in the shape of the rattles. And we thought it was a great way to reinforce the spiritual realms that we'd read about in other places, and infuse some further meaning into the rattles for ourselves. So Shla, the conscious ethical sphere, Achnach, the spiritual sphere, is the space between the first for the center and the first ring. The Knak is the cognitive sphere, that's the first ring. Suchet is the social sphere, that's the space between the rings. And Nuna, this physical sphere, is the outer ring. And the composition, so the rattles were composed of bent wood or shaved bent branches and 2 cross bars or a single bar handle, sinew, and later trade beads. So the rattle pieces depended on the location and the purpose. The puffin beaks were, depending on where you were from, Kodiak, Haida, Chugach, or Alaska Peninsula. So shells for Chugach, hooves for Chugach, and even bear claws in the Alaska Peninsula, so beyond the puffin beaks. The rattle pictured has attributions to the Aleutians or the Alaska Peninsula and also to Kodiak.
So those wood rings that are in these ancestral pieces were usually either bent wood rings or bent branch rings. Both are used. And if the rings were bent wood, then the holes were drilled into the wood to attach the rattle pieces usually. And if they're bent branches, then they were lashed to the ring. Those handles were lashed. So you can see that in these two photos, the difference. The handles were oftentimes decoratively carved, but not always. Sometimes they weren't. And some were painted in red, blue, and black were the usual colors that we saw.
Alutiiq colors. So blue, chunachtok, sea or schla, and it's vivianite. So that's a blue clay substance that would have been from Tlingit territory. So would have had been traded for. And it was never used as body paint. Black tanichtok, fire or canuck. Stone, copper ore, or wood charcoal. People painted their faces black while in mourning, and malignanite for the shiny sparkle. And then red, Cowichtuck, people, suchet, so it represents that, possibly. And ochre red, alder dye, hemlock, cranberry, and blueberry dye. And in some places, we've seen that representing ancestors. Heather?
So their use of rattles, Karl Heinrich wrote, Merck, a German naturalist who visited Kodiak in 1790, observed men dancing with puffin beak rattles. He described the dancers with a rattle or a bundle of feathers in each hand, and then the men held their arms up in the air, moving the rattles forward and backward, alternating arms. That information is from the Alutiiq Museum. And in this drawing, you see a man, possibly a shaman or a chief, holding a rattle in his hand, and it's a puffin beak rattle. Puffins shed their beaks. We found this information fascinating. It's something we didn't know when we started this. They only have their beautiful beaks and orange feet during the spring mating season. And then just before winter, they shed that outer beak cover, which creates a smaller and duller colored beak. We found that very interesting.
So one of the places that we saw that information was at the Phoebe Hearst Museum's archive. So this is part of a shaman's outfit for Haida culture. So this belt is Haida, and some Haida folks were down there in 1990, Reg Davidson and Jim Hart, and they said puffins shed their beaks every year and people go around and pick them up, and they hang out in certain areas. You need a boat to go out and get them. They're in secret spots, Haida secret spots. So we thought that that was really wonderful. So cast off beaks, again, we're finding that information in another source. So this is the Fitzhugh Crowell book, Across Continents. And the quote from there is, this dance rattle is made of 2 hoops to which dozens of cast off beak sheaths of the tufted puffin have been attached with sinew and ties.
So it's thought that puffins pierce the veil between the spirit realms, that they dive between the worlds because they fly, they walk on land, they dive into the oceans. This is just a short little video of a puffin located outside of Kodiak. It's diving.
And the connection to the spirit realm, we kind of talked about that before. The shamans and dancers were recorded as using rattles during ceremony, where they were purported to pierce the veil between the spirit world and their own, and the rattles' concentric hoops may represent the multi-layered Alutiiq universe. And so this graphic is from Alicia Draybeck, and it kind of harkens back to that meaning that we infused into the shape of the rattles that we were creating for the workshop. This is the cognac paddle. This is in, again, that Fitzhugh Crowell book, Across Continents. So they say the paddle is decorated with a land otter and a thunderbird attached to a dance rattle. So this is a drawing and it represents Alutiiq spiritual beliefs in the realms of the sky and the sea. And the drawing also directly corresponds with the shape Alutiiq people have chosen for some of their rattles.
So this rattle is in the Towns-Camara collection, which is located in Russia. It is attributed to Kodiak area from the 19th century. It's made with wood, obviously, paint, sinew, and puffin beaks. And this one in particular, I love the shape of the handles. It looks sort of like a petal, and I love the red color of the rings. It's just gorgeous. This is another rattle from the Towns-Camara collection. You can see that it is a different handle shape. It has lots of puffin beaks on it. Again, Kodiak area, same time period. This one's about 23 centimeters in diameter, so it's a good size. I will say that the rattles that we got to handle at the not the Burke Museum, the Phoebe Hearst Museum were very light. So these may look like a heavy object, but they actually don't weigh that much.
Here's another rattle from the Towns-Camara. We already looked at this a little bit earlier, so we'll go quickly over this one, but it's got the 5 rings, possibly to represent the 5 layers of the Alutiiq universe. And then lots of puffin rattle or puffin beaks on those. They make this really delightful, really light sound. I think the closest thing, like if you've seen those mobiles that are made out of fish scales and like what those sound like, it's very similar sound to the puffin beaks. So anyway, this one is in Russia and it's attributed to the Aleutians or to the Alaska Peninsula, but further out. Here's another one. I love this one. This one is a bent twig, so it's not a bigger piece of wood, but smaller piece of wood and unchanged from its original form, just bent. And they took the handles across it and it's they carved the handle to go onto the ring. And then I love that because they're not mitered into each other, the bottom handle is offset, so it's further down, which makes the inner ring be offset.
Again, this is a Towns-Camara rattle. This is the one I used for inspiration when I created the rattle that you saw at the very beginning. I love the hand-carved handles, the red and black paint, those bent rings, and also this one is just full of puffin beaks, so the sound of it must be absolutely amazing. This is a Towns-Camara rattle. We chose this one because of the handle design. It's just beautifully carved. It's very, I don't know, elegant, I would say. 2 rings on this one. Again, you can see 1, 2, 3, 5 rings, depending on maybe the purpose of the rattle or the maker or the location. But this one, the handles are just gorgeous.
This one's from Dartmouth Hood Museum. And that's where it's living now currently until it comes home. Hopefully sometime in the future. They believe that the placemate is the Aleutian Islands, Canada, or North America. So when you're going out and you're doing your own research, you might see that the archaeologists or the people in the museums, the curators in the museums are sort of guessing about where things are from if things weren't documented well. It looks like ours, but who knows, right? And this one has just the single handle on it, and then it has 3 rings. This is from the Phoebe Hearst Museum. We had the privilege of being able to see this one in person. Again, it just has the single handle across it. Again, it's the branches, and then it's lashed together across the top with sinew. Absolutely beautiful. This one also is definitely using ochre to give it color.
So this rattle is called Chayak rattle. It was collected by William J. Fisher on the Alaska Peninsula, likely Ugashic. This one is from the card, I think it's important, a shaman's rattle, 2 wood wooden hoops, one within the other, fastened to two sticks, crossing each other at right angles. Again, handles are, maybe exactly across, or sometimes they're an X shape. Numerous bear claws are tied to the hoops. It's only 7.5 inches across. It's just a beautiful rattle. As Jessica has done some research on William J. Fisher's work, and he was in that area for quite some time collecting.
He got stuck. He got stuck and then he lost his job. He couldn't get back. So anyway, I think he was there for a year. So this is our bibliography. We have a lot of references, and please do check those out. And Koyana, everyone.
Ayana, enjoy your rattle making.